Welcome, Prealgebra students. We are in lesson 55 today. We're going to talk a little bit more about fractions, decimals, and percents. A couple of lessons ago, we talked about taking a percent and turning it into a fraction and a decimal. Now we're going to talk about taking a fraction or a decimal and turning it into a percent. So let's say we had, 5 circles right here. And for whatever reason, only one of them got colored in. Like maybe we ran out of paint or the marker quit working or something. So this one got colored in, the rest of them didn't. So that was 1 out of the 5 that got colored in. We can turn this fraction into decimal. Remember that from a couple lessons ago. We just use our calculator. And we treat this like a division problem. And we say 1 divided by 5 is equal to 0.2. Okay, so this fraction, let's set this up. We have fraction, decimal, percent. You could put these in any order that makes sense to you on your chart. We started with a fraction this time. We turn it into a decimal. Well, in order to turn it into a percent, it needs to be out of 100. So what we need to do is make sure we have 2 decimal places, because this second decimal place is the hundredths place. So that's how we can just take this number and put it over 100. Right? Now we can turn this into a percent. Now we can say that that is 20%. Because we know that anything out of 100 is a percent. Because that's what percent means. It means out of 100. So we could take any fraction now and turn it into a percentage or a decimal because we have those skills. So let's say we want to check that and make sure. Do we remember how we do that? I remember. We take the fractions and we set them equal to each other, 20 over 100. And then we multiply and see if we get the same number. 1 times 100 is 100. 5 times 20, guess what? That's 100 too. So that means that we are correct. 1/5 is 20%. All right, so let's move on and look at an example problem with this. Let me clear the page. So we need to find, there's 2 problems for 55.1. 55.1a says to find the decimal equivalent, find the decimal equivalent. There'll be an I in there somewhere. Look, my language skills are not as good as my math skills. I'm just going to go ahead and put that out there. It's okay, because not everybody's perfect at everything. So find the decimal equivalent of 51. So if we know that the fraction is 51 out of 100, we know that the decimal is just going to be boom, boom. Move it twice because we got 2 zeros, so we move it 2 spaces. So that's 0.51. That wasn't even hard. Seriously, what are these people doing? All right, and all we did to get there, technically, we just moved the decimal places twice, but it's the same thing as if, come on, calculator. It's the same thing as if we had done it on the calculator. 51 divided by 100 is 0.51. So that's your trick, guys. If anything is divided by 100, all you have to do, or anything, 1 and any number of zeros, however many zeros it is, you just move the decimal place that many times. 1, 2, 0.51. If you had 51 divided by 10, that's 1 0. So how many times did you move the decimal place? 1 time. Then that would be 5.1. You want to check it and see? 51 divided by 10 is 5.1. Same answer. So it doesn't matter. You don't even have to use the calculator for things like this. If you're dividing by 100, you just move that decimal place 2 spaces to the left and turn it into the correct decimal number. All right, 55.1b is where we are now. And this says, find the percent of this. So, the percent. We know that if it's 51 over 100, that it's just 51 out of 100. That's all that means. So 51%. Easy peasy. We have done this before. And y'all are good at it. I'm quite sure. All right. So that is all we had for the percent part of this lesson. Now we have something called a reference number table. And guess what the reference number table is? The exact same thing that we have been doing. We have been creating a table and didn't even know it. Seriously. So, what we're going to do, they want us to write fraction, right? Decimal, percent. And then they want us to draw some lines, just like this, like a little box, just like that. And then put a couple of lines in here. And they want us to fill this table in with information. So the first one that they're giving us is 25%. So 25%. This one is 55.2. So they want us to fill in the fraction and the decimal. So if it's 25%, then that means it's 25 over 100, right? And if we're dividing by 2 zeros, we just move the decimal place twice, so that'd be 0.25. Easy peasy, right? This is so easy. You guys can do this already. 55.3 is simply this one. They want us to do 1 over 16 and turn it into a decimal and a percent. So what do we have to do that? Hello, calculator. 1 divided by 16 is 0.0625. So if that's our decimal, right? 0.0625. What percent is that? Well, all we have to do is move the decimal place back 2 spaces. 1, 2. So it's 6.25%. Yes, you can have a decimal in your percent because we're looking for the hundredths place, because percent means out of 100. So if it is more places than that, it's going to fall behind the decimal, and that's okay. You can have that. 6.25% is valid. It is the right answer. So we have one more, and that is one we started with earlier. And in this case, 55.4, they gave us the decimal, 0.51, and they want us to turn it into a fraction and a percent. Okay, well, this is easy peasy for percent. It's just 51%, right? And then it's easy peasy for the fraction. So it's just 51 over 100. I will say that when you make your fraction, if you can, reduce it if at all possible. We can't reduce 51 out of 100 because this is not divisible by 2 or 10 or 5. If it's divisible by 2 or 10 or 5, then we can reduce them. This one is reducible by 5. 25 divided by 5 is, actually, it's reducible by 25. So 25 by 5 would be 5 out of 20. Is that right? Yeah. We can reduce that again because 5 out of 20 is 1/4. So if you can reduce your fraction, reduce your fraction. That's pretty much a standard rule in algebra. If you can reduce the fraction, reduce the fraction. If not a variable, if a fraction is divisible into a whole number, divide it into the whole number. However, if the fraction is not divisible into a whole number, leave it the way it is. But if you can reduce this fraction, reduce it, just so you have that information handy and readily available. You never know when you're going to need it. Also, when you reduce a number or you reduce a fraction to its smallest form, it is so much easier to do the math and the multiplication, because then you can almost do it in your head. You know, it's much easier to multiply or take a fraction of 1/4 of something as opposed to 25 out of 100 of something. Reduce when you can. And when it's a weird number, you can't. So leave it alone. All right? Do what makes common sense. All right. My 5 here looks a little wonky, but we're just going to leave him alone. That is all there is for lesson 55. I mean, seriously. Easy peasy, just the way it is. So we are going to see you or see each other again, but it's going to be in lesson 56.